This is not a very long presentation, but it's so powerful. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi he was the founder of the Transcendental Meditation technique, which I started to practice at the age of 16, and I'm very happy that I started because I was so depressed. I had reasons for my depression, both physical and mental, but it took a matter of weeks to get over the depression, and then I freaked out. Life can't be this good so easily, because the technique is predicated on practically doing nothing. No strain. The adage, no strain, no gain. Well, that's not the way it works with TM. You strain and you don't get nothing. So I freaked out, and I went to advanced lectures every Friday night to assure myself that I was not an oddball, or that, there was something weird, because I was a teenager. Teenagers don't like to be weird. They want to fit in. It's very important. And when they want to exercise their right to rebel, they want to rebel against tradition. And this is a little side note here, but I ended up finding out that I was rebelling against, I was agreeing with tradition, not rebelling against it, when I became a vegan vegetarian, fasting on fruits and vegetables. That's exactly what my parents did before I was born for a whole decade. But, nobody talked about it. It was a mysterious, hidden segment of my prehistory that nobody wanted in my family to talk about it. My cousin would say, "Oh, I'd go to your brother's birthday parties, and your mom made very interesting stuff." That doesn't tell me what they were doing. I didn't know enough to inquire. I said, "Oh, whatever, Anyway, so I'm way off topic, aren't I? So Maharishi has this habit of agreeing with his critics. And then he says, okay, let's go from here and see how we can find some common ground. And he would end up swaying his opponents to his side. It was such, and I'll give you the example. He was in Germany, West Germany. This was before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Okay, he figured the two countries on this planet who are the most progressive, who would probably most likely take to TM, was West Germany and the United States, because he felt they were the most progressive countries in the world. So when he was in West Germany lecturing, giving introductory lectures, at the end of one lecture, these yoga masters came up to the front of the hall and said, Maharishi, we disagree with you. What you're saying, that it's effortless and straining is wrong, and all it does is produce stress, yada yada. We disagree with you. And Maharishi agreed with them and ended up getting them to agree with him that yoga has been misinterpreted all these centuries, millennia, in that strain is required. You have to force the mind. The mind is a wild animal, and you have to bring it back to point. You have to concentrate. You have to strain. In fact, when my mother got in my way to start TM, I became desperate, and I went to a public library, and the only book I could find that was anything remotely similar to TM was this book on concentration. And I got tremendous headaches. Moving a needle around in a floating in a bowl of water. Oh, I got it to move. That wasn't the problem. And I even got it to reverse direction. And it didn't rotate like a compass needle would rotate. It went around the perimeter of the bowl, always pointing in the same direction, as if a hand were holding on to it. Getting it to reverse direction was the hardest thing in the world, and it gave me the biggest headache of the world. And then I just stopped doing it. And once I started TM a half a year later, because I became very motivated at this point, I figured, I don't need this. I need to start TM. So I realized, hey, I got a stepfather. I'll let him sign the parental release form, because I was, a minor. And they still forced me to earn the $35 for a high school student rate. So I had to, work my knuckles raw, literally. But that was my choice, because I didn't want to buy gloves. I didn't want to spend a penny on anything but the technique. I didn't want to waste my funds on anything else, so I raked leaves with my bare hands. It was horrible. No rake and no gloves, just my bare hands. But it worked, and within 1 week, I got rid of all the stress that I had acquired from working so hard to get that $35. And then I could work on all the prior stresses that I had accumulated in my short span of 16 years of being alive on this planet. Let's see, where was I before I got so distracted? When I was doing that book on concentration, it took me 11 months to get rid of the headaches once I started to meditate. Because I still had the habit pattern of strain. Even though I wasn't straining in TM, I was getting results. In particular, when I went for my checkings at the TM Center. When you first start, they recommend you go frequently for checkings to make sure you're doing it correctly. Namely, you're not straining. But unfortunately, I was still getting headaches. Even though I wasn't straining at TM, somehow I was still getting headaches. So it took it was just a matter of time. Since I wasn't doing anything wrong with the TM practice, it took time to lose that component of strain that was somehow in the back of my subconscious mind. Now, notice I very flippantly passed very quickly through the telekinesis exercise that was in that concentration book. And I want to give another minute or two to that. There was somebody on Quora who posted the question, what is this telekinesis business? Is it for real? Yada, yada. And I took a very odd, maybe rare approach in that I said, don't dwell on it. Because it's a very spiritual precept, and it's a very commonsensical one that's well known among yoga practitioners, not to put attention on powers, special powers, abilities. They come as a side effect to spiritual development, and they mark your way. They're like milestones. Maharishi Patanjali wrote a book. Now, this is not Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. This is another yogi who is well known. He's called by the name Patanjali, and he wrote Yoga Sutras, which are not all the statements that can be made about special powers that can be developed on the path to enlightenment, but it's just a kind of a short treatment of the subject, and very terse and very well organized. And he says that when he gives a kind of a smattering, a kind of a synopsis of a few well-known city powers, like walking through walls, levitation, walking on hot coals or glass, or water, for that matter, seeing things that cannot be seen with the eyes, distant things or things from the past, all these different abilities, and he does them in sequential manner, and the basis for him listing them at all, let alone in sequential manner, is, on your path, as you gain enlightenment, these are milestones that you can mark along the way. Oh, I've come this far, But he says ultimately, at the very end of his book, or penultimately, I think it's the second to the last verse, he says there's only two things the mind can be engaged in. You're either moving towards enlightenment or you're moving towards experience. And that's really all you can do in the choices that we make. We either gain experience and skills, and some of them are very good. It helps keep us alive. Others are just amusing or like a hobby. I love to study free energy. The practical sense is I want to fix my dead electric car with its dead batteries, or get it to run without having to use batteries to depend on. But that's a hobby as well as a practical thing. Whether, it's a hobby at the very least, whether or not I actually succeed in coming up with something that's safe that I can do and is buildable, that I can figure out, and also within my limited budget. But then some things like, paying the bills, you got, what's your day job, right? They tell actors don't quit your day job, so, whatever that, Harrison Ford was a carpenter before he became an actor. And he had a skill. I think Kevin Costner had a skill as well. I can't remember what it was, though. Well, he was living in his car, actually, when he first got started as an actor, and I think his wife was living with him, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, some people have rough beginnings, Tesla had to quit his very, very short job with Thomas Edison, his only letter of credit to come to this country, because they didn't get along. Tesla didn't like Edison's flippant attitude when it comes to being honest. You make a verbal agreement and you don't keep to it. What's going on here? I'm out of here. So he got out the door and dug ditches until he was able to get anywhere. See, where was I? I get so excited. So I told this person on Quora, don't focus on whether or not it's possible to move objects with your mind, because A, you could get headaches if you force it. B, it's not going to put food on the table. It's not going to pay the bills. And this was my response to, at the end of working that concentration book, the exercises, making the needles move around in water. I thought, this is worthless, and all I'm getting out of it is headaches. So I wanted something more worthwhile. Now, I might as well add this additional note. When the cities became available, when Maharishi started to make them available to the normal meditators, sorry, I'm old and I'm sickly. He had already used many of the TM teachers as guinea pigs off in Switzerland, testing out which cities, might be most useful. He gave up on the invisibility one because people were turning blue. I guess it was affecting their circulation or something. This one lady, she was, sitting cross-legged, and she had a blanket over her legs, and all you could see was her smiling grin. She was like a Cheshire cat, in Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's, fable. That's all that she couldn't make herself totally invisible, so only her grin was remaining. But she must have been having a good time to be grinning. Let's see. And another story. These guys were doing the Flying Sutra, hopping around on foam rubber because, they weren't able to hover. And the birds outside, one of them had the insight that the birds outside were having a conversation with each other, laughing at the humans. Oh, look at those humans, those ridiculous creatures. They think they can fly. Ha ha ha, tweet, tweet, tweet. It's like, I've had experiences myself. So I'm not averse to relay to you some of these experiences of other people. I've had moments where I've understood animals, insects, fetuses, babies. So I know what it's like to, it's not just a question of moving, needles around in water. And although it sounds like I'm bragging, I took the position early on in life when I was about 4 years old that there's no other way to inform people about things that they should know about, that nobody is talking about, to give people this idea, this viewpoint that there's so much more to life than what is commonly held to be true or commonsensical. And it could be so uplifting if I shared this with people. So at the risk of sounding like I'm bragging, at the risk of actually bragging, I think it's worth taking those risks and sharing these little anecdotes with people. Because I was born with gifts. This is my second lifetime as a meditator. I'm not enlightened. I'm still struggling with it. It's not easy. It's the hardest task for the human. Because most of us, Charlie Lutz would say, we leave for last. The hardest karmic lesson is the lesson of humility. And let me tell you, there's nothing worse than having to own up to humility, and not in an introverted sense. Woody Allen gives this sense of, I'm a worthless scumbag, and I'm just, yada, yada. That's not humility. That's inverted egotism, in which you take egotism and you turn it outside in. You turn it on yourself and you flail yourself. Catholics did this in Central or South America, and they may still do, but there's a history of them, on, I think it's the day after Halloween, they'll walk down the streets in a parade, and against their bare backs, they will flail whips and chains to scar their backside. They think it's a good idea, It'll give, because we're such sinners, that we should make ourselves suffer more than we already are. I don't know how that helps. It matters any. I have to admit, fasting in small amounts, in a limited sense, is beneficial. It does purify, and it is one of the techniques that Patanjali cites as one of the methods of acquiring abilities. It does burn off some karma, not a whole lot, and it does require a lot of effort, and you put yourself at risk. So, unless, I learned early on that fasting is helpful if you have a fever, If you don't have an appetite, you got a fever, then why bother eating? Just take a lot of liquids and go with it. Go with the flow, Why fight it and keep stuffing your face, You're sick. Why bother? And it actually helped me get through the sickness, the flu or the fever, a lot more efficiently than if I had kept up eating, Oh, you got to have some chicken soup. No, you don't. Just give me some apple juice or orange juice or tomato juice, and I'll be happy. That's the first thing I think of when I get on the plane, an airline, they ask you, what would you like to drink? And then I ask them to blend it, because I don't want it one way or another, because it'll either be too sweet and disgusting or too sour and salty and disgusting. So I say, can you blend for me some tomato juice and apple juice, please? And they accommodate me, It's kind of nice. Anyway, so let's see. So I started out with Maharishi, that's right, and I covered a lot of different things. So, at least I get them all in. But I thought it was worthy of note because I'm starting to do it. Agreeing with people I normally want to argue with when it comes to free energy. And it's mind-boggling. It opens up a whole new vista. How? Because normally I am so frustrated. How am I supposed to get my message across to people? I feel like I'm pounding my head against a wall and getting nowhere. Yet, recently, so recently, maybe in the last couple of months, I very gingerly, actually several months, more like a year or two, I've been gradually, because this is not easy for me, okay? So little baby step by little mini step, I've been agreeing with some people, and it has helped my psychology and open up my viewpoint to be very positive and constructive and find and be able to discover other areas where I can insert my perspective without the risk of, oh my God, I've been shut out of so many forums and had message threads erased or closed down. It's like, it's beyond sad. It gets me very angry. So, because anger doesn't do anything productive, this insight to agree with my so-called adversary, my critic, is something I've long since forgotten about. When I was younger, I knew about this principle, and I think I used it. In fact, I didn't even meet up with Charlie Lutz or learn about the TM movement when I used it, and then I'll stop talking after I tell you this little story. My mom thought it best to send me to summer camp. Now, she didn't know I wasn't having a good time, and every summer I got sick at summer camp just before they would take the group photos of everybody at the camp, so I was never in the photo album. I think one time I didn't get sick, but every other time I got sick. And finally, when she asked me, how do you like it? I said, I hate it. It's disgusting. I never have any fun. I'm always getting sick with the puking up, food poisoning sick, puking up food, pink puke. And I didn't know that. I thought you liked it. Well, how could you know, right, if you never bothered to ask, right? Well, only because I never complained, but she little did she know, she taught me never to complain, see? I took it pretty seriously because I gave up, because, I was born sickly and weak, so I really didn't have the stamina to stand up to her, like most kids do, They say the first word out of a baby's mouth is the word no. It's not dada, it's no. And I don't know what my first word was, but it definitely could not have been no, because I'm always trying to agree with everybody, because it just makes it easier for me. But nowadays, when I try to stick up for myself, I've gotten on the opposite habit of arguing too much. And it makes me very frustrated and all pent out of shape and stressed. And so I'm bringing back this idea of agreement with people, and it really helps. So what I did, I went to one summer camp one summer. It was a Jewish summer camp. It was off the coast of the Pacific Coast Highway. I have Judaism on my mother's side of the family and Christianity on my father's side, but I wasn't raised a Christian because I have very little knowledge or awareness of my father or anything about him. He died when I was a baby, so mostly I was raised as a Jew. Not that I count that for much. Songs, we learned songs and how to make matzah cake out of matzah and chocolate and Manischewitz wine and get a little drunk in Sunday school. I mean, we were the Reform Jews. We went to Sunday school. We didn't go on Saturday. Excuse me. Very Reform. The temple was in Hollywood, and it's called Temple of Hollywood, or Hollywood Temple. No, Temple of Hollywood. Yeah, it's called Temple of Hollywood. It's in Hollywood, California. Very big temple, I might say. Yeah, all I really got out of it was the songs and the music. That was it. That was about it. Anyway, so she sent me to a Jewish summer camp thinking that might be better, maybe. I don't know. And I was horrible in the relay races, in the swimming competition. Oh my God, they made me do the butterfly. I can't do the butterfly. I stayed in one place and my rear end went up and down and up and down and up and down. And the coach, my cabin counselor, is there by my side, because I was by the side of the pool, rooting me. Come on, you could do it. Come on. I wanted to say, dude, hello, do you see I'm not moving? I'm not getting anywhere. And meanwhile, my cabin mates are going, oh my God, what is he doing? He's losing for us. Our team is lost. You're supposed to carry the baton and pass it to the next guy who has to do a different stroke on the way back in the opposite direction across the pool. Everybody gets assigned a different stroke, and you don't get to pick one. And I was assigned the butterfly, and I couldn't do it. Now I can do it, although my legs are worthless. But I can do it with my arms because I figured out, how to use your arms. Oh, it was horrible. No, the breaststroke. No, I can do the breaststroke. No, the butterfly is hard. I have to admit, if I do it on my back, what do you do it's not the butterfly, when you do first one arm and then the other. It's kind of like a forward scissors or a forward conventional stroke, except you do it on your back. That one I love to do. No, the butterfly is really hard. No, I think I can do the butterfly. Yeah, because I've learned to use my arms and forget about my legs. My legs are worthless, and I've never figured out how to do the butterfly, to assist the butterfly with my legs. Anyway, so in that summer camp, we were waiting for lunch one day, and we were waiting quite a while. They were a little delayed. And this girl came over and started criticizing me, and that wasn't what was curious. What was curious was that she made up stuff. She didn't know me from beans. I was a stranger. She just picked because she had nothing better to do, I guess. So when she got done, I just stood there and listened to her. I didn't engage. I was kind of stunned, so I couldn't really engage in argumentation with her. And I really wasn't that kind of person at that age anyway. Now, my God, it's a drop of a hat. I can get pissed off and argue. But no, I just sat there and kind of looked at her, strange or weird or whatever. And when she got done, she turned and walked away and went back to where she was standing, waiting for, the lunch doors to open up so we could go have lunch. Well, I kind of stood there with it, and she felt very good about herself. I could see she was very pleased with herself and very confident that, she conquered me. Why? God knows, but she did, because I was kind of standing there, kind of quizzical, what am I supposed to do with that, what am I supposed to do with that? So I came upon a plan, and I thought, this will knock her socks off. So I went over to her, and I started thanking her, profusely thanking her, and commending her, and finding everything good about her I could possibly think of. Lie to the max if I had to, but say only good things and lots of them. Did you hear me pounding my knee with my thigh with my fist there for emphasis. Anything I could possibly come up with, lie if I had to. But it had to be only good stuff. And you should have seen the shocked look on her face. It was unbelievable. Her eyebrows went up to the sky, and her mouth must have hung open, and she just was stunned. She was in shock. I put her in shock. I wasn't in shock. I was just kind of curious, like, what would drive somebody to do something like that who doesn't even know me to do that, It's like, what does she think? What does she think she's accomplishing? It's kind of like the time when I was in 6th grade and somebody grabbed my crotch. This guy, thinking he could make my balls hurt, and all he did was grab a bunch of cloth because I wore, I guess, my pants very low, and there was nothing to grab except cloth. And I just stood there and looked at him like, okay, is this meaningful? And he looked at me, my God, you must have a tremendous tolerance for pain. And I never bothered to tell him that he missed the mark by a few inches, So it was kind of that same good feeling. And another time when I was in Boy Scouts, the initiation was to strip us naked and chase us through the woods with flashlights in the middle of the night. And little did they know they were going to strip naked a nudist, They didn't know that. I was still a clandestine nudist at the time, so, and I've had to retire back into that at this point, quite frankly. It's too stressful to be public about it anymore. But when they were undressing me, I didn't fight them. I didn't resist. And my friend Jimmy Rogerson, he fought them, and he screamed, and he held on to his clothes as long as he could. And they stripped him naked and chased him through the woods with flashlights, screaming at him. And oh, my God. And he was so scared, he begged his father, please let me sleep with you tonight. No, you have to go through this initiation. Everybody goes through it, and you got to be a man. He didn't act like one. And they loved it. Oh, they loved it. They wanted him to fight and resist. But I just sat there. And I looked at them as if they were my dressers, and I was king, and they were undressing me for the night. I was queen or king or something, because I know I was a queen in a past life at the very least, so I probably thought in those terms. But at the time, I didn't know that, so I just thought, I'm their king, and they're undressing me, and they're my servants, So I thought, scheming in my brain, that I was going to turn around and chase them through the woods screaming naked, and get them to freak out. But that never happened. When they got me down to my underwear and T-shirt, they huddled, and they said, this guy must be freaking out. He's not fighting us. This is not normal. We better stop right here. We don't want to traumatize him. And they came back. We're so sorry. Here's your clothes. We're just going to leave you alone now. Please don't be upset with us. And we'll go off, and that'll be the end of it. We hope you forgive us. Can you imagine this? I was so disappointed. So that's the kind of the opposite, to try to give you the opposite example. While the girl at the summer camp, she was just, she was so stunned. She never ever bothered me ever again. And she, there's actually, now I'm going to shut up. One more thing and I'll shut up. Gurudev, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's guru, once told a story of this guy who came outside the ashram and was criticizing him personally, one upside once and down the other. And his disciples in the ashram said, hey, look, we can't take this anymore. We're about to go outside now and turn this guy out on his ear. Please give us permission to do this. And he said, nope, you're not going to do that. This is the first time you've ever had this opportunity for learning a lesson that I haven't been able to teach you up until now. And now's the opportunity. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to go outside there, and you're going to offer him, you're going to ask him, how's he doing? Is he hot? Is he okay? Come here, sit under the shade. Are you thirsty? Here, have something to drink. Are you hungry? Here, have something to eat. Do you need money to take a taxi to go back home? Did you travel a long distance to get here? Here, have a few rupees or whatever it is they gave him. Here, we don't want you to walk, and we want you to take a nice taxi ride to go back home. Well, the guy, when he got home, he had nothing but praise for this person, this guru, Maharishi's guru, that he had slandered just hours prior. Nothing but praise. And, it may not be our first inclination to do stuff like this. And so maybe it's worth saying, it has nothing to do with free energy. It has nothing to do with health. Well, maybe not physical health directly, but psychosomatically speaking, indirectly, yeah, it would. Because it's really for our benefit as well as for other people. Now I'm going to give you one more story and then I'm going to shut up. There's this former alcoholic. His family and friends, all they'd ever do is say, oh, look, Angel, you've got to stop drinking and be a normal person like us. And he's going in his head, screw you, because you don't understand what I've gone through. I've been abused in my childhood. Tremendous abuse. My babyhood. When I was an infant, I was abused. I'm in no position to stop drinking. Well, I took the position that most meditators in TM meditators take, that in order to do TM, you don't fight the mantra, you don't fight thoughts, you don't fight anything. You take everything as it comes, and you be very innocent about the procedure on how to perform TM, how to practice TM. So I took the same attitude with him. I figured, okay, I know what I prefer he'd do. I wish he'd stop drinking because he's more fun when he's sober. But he has to drink. Okay, fine. He knows my position. I don't have to pound it into him. I'm going to support him regardless. I'm going to give him what he needs. Otherwise, shelter, food, beer. It took me a while. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't easy to buy beer for him. Or cigarettes, for that matter. I'm an asthmatic, so I don't like people smoking around me. I can't even burn incense to meditate. God. But I felt it was more to his betterment that I support him rather than get in his way. And you know what? It worked. There came a point in his sojourn with me, sleeping in my living room, and eating the food I got for him and drinking the beer that I bought for him. He ended up going to the hospital. He called the ambulance, but I was out doing a job, and because I do freelance work, and I said, okay, I'll get there as fast as I can. I'm just about to finish up the job. Because I would take him to the hospital rather than go in an ambulance. Because he's gone so many times that, wow, I don't know if your insurance can cover it, because he already owes thousands of dollars to the insurance company because he can't pay. He's not rich like me. But he does have this problem, multiple problems, and he was drinking. But one day he was in ghastly pain. He's been in pain before, and he would drink in order to allay the pain and write it off. Oh, well, I'm probably irritating my stomach from puking so much. Well, it was more than that. There was an element of that, but it was more than that. It was his pancreas. His pancreas was half dead, and he didn't know it because he'd been so busy suppressing his awareness of the pain. And the pancreas is right next door to the stomach, and that's why he misdiagnosed what the pain was about, and telling himself it was nothing, when in reality it was something really bad. So he was in the hospital for more than a month, and now he's got a half-dead pancreas that is infected or infecting the surrounding tissue, and he has to take antibiotics. But now he's got a reason for not drinking. Now, I learned at some point that he is not an addict to alcohol. He does it for a reason, because he has to, because he's self-medicating, because he can't get the drugs and medication he needs to get for his psychological trauma that he still has to live with for the rest of his life, for having been abused as an infant and a child, and a young adult for that matter. So go out and get beer. It's readily available. Well, now he's got all the medications in the world that he takes all day long, and some of it's antibiotics, and he's got a bag draining out fluid from his infected abdomen from the necrotic, half-dead pancreas. He had to make himself so ill that now he's motivated not to drink. But that was the only way for him to get to that point. Now, he could have been dead. Without me helping him, he could have been dead. Because I've seen, he was cutting his arms, he's slashing them. He's got scars on his arms from all the times he slashed himself with a knife. And how about the few times I held him in my arms to let him know that someone loves him, somebody cares about him, somebody is not willing to abandon him just because he's an alcoholic, just because nobody wants him or even likes him or finds him fun to be around. That doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to be loved. And so that was my approach. And it paid off. It worked. So, sometimes the positive approach is better than the negative. Despite our tendency at first reaction, our knee-jerk response is to be negative. But it pays to be positive. If something is worth that much to you, I guess, you do like I did. You'll be positive. And although I started out this monologue inspired by some happy results that I'm getting in my approach to trying to deal with people on the topic of free energy by agreeing with them, lying if I have to, because at least it gets my foot in edgewise that I can now then introduce other concepts that I wouldn't have been able to introduce had I not lied. What is my personal view of free energy, yada yada. If I lie, if I find the right moment, the right way to lie without damaging my self-respect, because I'm actually finding something that I do agree with, so it's not really a lie, it's just I'll stretch my agreement a little into the area of lying, get a little too gung-ho about agreeing with something that I can't agree with. Anyway, without getting any more precise, because I don't really want to give it away what it is about, but now full circle, it comes to the point that, when you're helping a friend who you care about, who you grow to care about, and you're willing to support them even though you can't stand them. Oh my God, I was so stressed. By the time he got into the hospital over that pancreas, I was so stressed, and I let him know in no uncertain terms several times that, dude, I really feel badly what you put me through. Watching you writhe in pain and scream for hours before they finally admitted you, knowing that it was so avoidable, and he knows that. So he knows that, but still, despite how I felt, I still supported him and helped him, despite how much I regretted and resented doing it. And it was the only way to help him, because he was that much a basket case. So taking the positive approach, even if it means lying, does work. It works, nothing short of miracles.